A strange turn of events where the Quest 3 128GB model dropped €100 only in Poland. This sale that seems to have showed up lasted very briefly as people were able to buy and get these on order, but then quickly people showed that it was now out of stock. This of course adding more fuel to the fire of rumors about maybe a 256GB Quest 3 replacing the 128. The fact that maybe a Lite is coming and they wanted to clear out some sort of stock, or could this just have been a mistake? It was only one country, one place, and it didn't last very long. People of course mentioning after seeing this, it's making them wonder if they want to wait, hold out and see what's happening, see if they should buy a Quest now or wait on price. I expect we'll probably get some sort of news, but although this was just one country, one place, maybe we won't ever know why this happened. But I don't think it would put off the decision of buying one soon, but it does bring back that question of, are they going to replace that smaller model with a bigger storage model just like they did with the Quest 2? Granted, it's still a little early from launch, but what do you think? Unfortunately, that Quest 3 discount was extremely limited where it went and fleeting. There's another discount right now if you're looking for a Quest 2, although it's probably only going to last today, if that. It's while supplies last. Electronics.woot.com is doing the Quest 2 128GB for $229 brand new. It's an okay deal if you're looking for another Quest 2 or your first VR headset. It's getting a little cheaper. You can get them a lot cheaper used, but if you want it brand new, you don't want to have to worry about someone else sweating it. I'll leave a link to that in case you're interested. Quest software update v63 is about to launch, and if there's a single channel that tries to say biggest update, craziest update ever, it's going to be hilarious because this is the smallest Quest release update notes I've ever seen for an update. v63, 2 features: Quest Cache, lying down mode. And look at that here compared to like v62 and v60. You don't even have to scroll to see these nodes. But let's talk about the features really quick. Quest Cache basically sounds like a fancy way of making store credit a bit more givable. It can also be simpler because you can top up an account. It's talking a lot here about parents topping up their kids' account with like so much money, and that would be a budget instead of them just being able to buy games randomly on their card. But it makes it easy to send it to friends and other people. You can basically just give an amount of Quest money for them to spend on Quest games, whether that's a walkabout mini golf course that's $3 and your friend needs that just to buy it real quick to play it. Basically, you'll be able to buy any amount of cash, give any amount to anybody you want to. And it says that if you've already been using MetaQuest gift cards, this will let you have your remaining balance moved over into Quest Cache once it's live later this month. This raises a big question for me though, as someone who does utilize the referral program and gets store credit out of that. Is that credit going to turn into Quest Cache? Because if so, that'd make it a lot easier to actually give some of that away. We typically are just sitting on too much because it's always maxed out. I'll buy someone a game here and there on the Discord or something with it, but it's complicated because you have to like get their Oculus user ID, figure out what game, gift it directly to them. So being able to send cash would be a little easier, but you probably still need all the same things like their username and such. The other addition from this update is lying down mode, which basically makes it a lot easier to lie back and watch something on your Quest, play a game. Because before, if you try to lay down, the menu kind of always stayed facing forward instead of going up above you and facing directly down. This will be under the experimental settings tab though in the settings menu, and then you can click use apps while lying down. But something weird to note here, the lying down mode only lists the Quest 2 and the Quest Pro. So something about the Quest 3 sensors and how they're implementing it, it's either not ready yet or it's just not coming for now over to Quest 3. As with most updates, v63 may roll out in chunks to different people, so you may not see these show up right away, although it does say in the release notes it's supposed to release on March 5th or the week of March 5th. And one last strange thing to note about the v63 update is maybe, although it looks really short, maybe there's more than meets the eye to this Quest 3 update, because there is some things that people have noted and found who use the public test channel where you can try the beta of these early. Luna over on Twitter, who's always a great source of information of upcoming leaks and stuff on the Quest 3, shows how it's looking like Meta is testing allowing 2D Android apps to show up on the universal menu dock now. This is definitely more for the tinkers, people who have been side loading Android apps, but it means you could get back into them easier because they are staying there. People who have really been digging into the public test channel too have also noted something strange that's going on. It seems that they've lost access to scope storage. This typically allows folder access for things like game modding. As one of the Meta forum moderators pointed out, this actually isn't something that was intentionally done, but part of a new update to Android that implemented some security features has locked access to those files. Could make things a little harder on modders, but keep in mind, especially when we talk about the future public test channel, these aren't always things that actually make it into the final update, and since they're not listed on that list, this might be something that we see in 64. It could be in something that slips through on 63, so keep that in mind for when it actually rolls out. If you were on your Quest a lot yesterday, you might have noticed that the Quests basically went down for an hour. Every internet-connected Quest headset stopped working, along with Meta's other services like Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Inside the Quest, it said something went wrong and you couldn't open up any apps. This isn't the first time we've seen something Facebook go down and it affected the VR headsets, but it's a sad reminder of how your headset is still connected into this whole network and world to where if something happens to that service, it could get bricked and you could lose access to your games. Upload VR points out that the really strange thing was that a lot of people thought that this was because Quest headsets need a connection to Meta servers, but you can use them offline. I've used it on an airplane when it had no connection, so that was showing how weird it was that they weren't working at all. Luckily, some of Twitter's higher-ups like Boz and Mark Rapkin headed over to Twitter to talk about what actually happened. They said the login servers basically had a bug and were returning responses the headsets didn't expect, which made the sessions invalid. They promised they'd work to make it more resilient to this super rare condition. Over on Reddit, people were quick to point out that this felt like a reminder that although we're buying these headsets, sometimes it feels more like we're renting them, especially when losing your account on something like a Quest can take away all of your games that you've ever bought. Or if you're someone who bought a PS5 and you bought physical games, it doesn't always feel like that is as much of a possibility. It's weird to see how more and more as we get more used to the internet always being a thing, how suddenly when the internet or a certain service on it goes down, it feels like everything just comes to a screeching halt. Most everything I ever watch now is always streamed. If you lose your internet, it's like you're digging for an old Blu-ray or a DVD or something to watch. It's wild how dependent we get on the technology around us. We've kept you updated the last couple of months about Meta working on some AR prototypes that they say, at least Boz has said, is one of the most revolutionary pieces of tech ever. It's not confirmed this is exactly that same one, but now Meta's reportedly going to be unveiling their prototype AR glasses Project Orion at Connect this year. The Meta Connect event is usually their big yearly event where they announce the new hardware, tell us the new specs. We actually got to go this last year, check it out, and see them talking about the Quest 3, and of course got to play with a bunch of them there. Now a report coming from Business Insider is saying that Meta's AR team has been tapped to get its Orion AR glasses ready to unveil at Connect 2024. These are glasses that have supposedly been under development for the past 9 years, and it's not unusual at all for different prototypes, different things to be tested at Meta Connect because of how much press comes to the event. This will be really exciting if it's true that these are really going to be ready for people to actually test, because they are supposed to be true AR glasses and not some sort of HUD-based smart glasses like we saw with the Google Glass or even mixed reality headsets. The report does maintain that this would only be people testing them out, seeing what the prototypes are like, and that an actual product probably wouldn't reach consumers till about 2027. Although if this is true and we somehow get to test them out, I'm going to be telling you everything about them, because I would love to actually get to see some real true AR glasses in person. But these are all early reports, so we'll keep you posted. Whether you've been in VR for a long time or a little, I'm sure you've heard the name Oculus. Oculus was the original company's name back before Facebook ever bought it, before Facebook became Meta, and all those other things. Meta is now finally moving forward with deleting the OG Oculus accounts at the end of this month. There's a lot of history here, so if you haven't been around a while, originally Oculus got purchased by Facebook. Palmer Luckey was still one of the heads of the company back then. They promised that you would never have to have a Facebook account. Years later, Palmer Luckey's gone. Facebook says you have to have a Facebook account. Then they changed their name to Meta. Then you have to have a Meta account. And if you're like me, you've got like 5 of these accounts now. You're not even sure if they're all merged or not. And now all of a sudden you're getting emails saying Oculus accounts are about to be killed. That will delete your account and everything tied to it, including any games. Now, if you still do have an Oculus account, you should have been getting emails all this time saying that you need to set up your Meta account, migrate everything over. Stuff even shows here an example of what the email looks like that someone else got, saying that basically by the 29th of March, you need to have this done. This has been a long and arduous process that really seems unnecessary, honestly. Like, if people had an Oculus accounts, why did we have to switch it up all these times? Why did we have to make Meta accounts? And to be fully honest with you here, I'm not exactly sure I'm even safe in this situation. I have had to merge Instagram accounts and Meta accounts and everything so many times that even when a developer sends me a game with like early access, it can be hard to get it linked up to where I can even get on it on my actual Quest because of all of these account issues I've had. So somehow I doubt deleting this is going to simplify that process any, but I'm actually kind of worried that I'm going to lose my account on March 29th. So if so, you'll be hearing back from a very annoyed me. If you have been getting emails, or if you haven't, it might still be worth checking your spam folder, just make sure. But gosh, would they just stick with this name finally and this account and stop making us merge everything? That'd be great. In the now struck battle between the Apple Vision Pro and the much cheaper Quest 3, we're of course getting more and more articles digging in and comparing them further. And one tech website is talking about how the Apple Vision Pro's optics are actually blurrier and lower contrast than the optics in the Meta Quest 3. This article actually goes into a lot of depth and is an interesting read, so I will leave a link down below in the comments and description if you want to check it out for yourself. Basically, this is a tech website that's done tons of different through the lens photographs, and with all of their experience in doing this, they said that looking through the Apple Vision Pro's image, they're seeing that it is actually a little blurrier. They've got all different kinds of pictures here where they show close-ups, different fonts, different images. But one disclaimer I want to put out there right now, as advanced as these headsets are getting, you have to remember that sometimes when comparing through the lenses, it is harder to compare apples to apples than it used to be, especially when headsets have foveated rendering. That's where it's seeing where your human eye is facing, it's making that the best looking part of the image and letting the rest be blurrier to save on processing power. That actually gave us difficulty when we tried to do it through the lens of the PSVR 2. What I had to do was focus exactly on what I was looking at. Someone else had to watch the social screen, make sure that stayed rendered properly, pull the headset off, and then take a picture with that being the center focal point. The experience side here makes me think they would have that ability, but it is something to keep in mind when looking at anything like this. Carl Gutaw goes on to talk about how people are really praising how the Vision Pro has no screen door effect, but then citing that it does, but it's blurred, it's hidden. This was actually a trick we saw in the original PSVR, and back then these tricks weren't really known. Everyone wondered, how is it that the PSVR had such low resolution yet so little screen door effect compared to the Vive or the Rift at the time? What they had done, which is, we don't know yet if that's exactly what they're talking about with the Apple Vision Pro here, but what PSVR had done was used a light diffusion layer that created a tiny bit of blur so that light could spread out more before it reached your eyes, so that where there was a space between the pixels of darkness, that light had now diffused out a little bit and you could no longer pick out that line as easily. It made the image look less screen doory, but a little more blurry. So in this article about the Apple Vision Pro, Gutaw says the AVP covers its lower than human vision angular resolution by making everything bigger and bolder, so that defaults even for the small window mode setting are still pretty large, helping you not see the edges of the pixels on things like text, which is usually an area that's very easy to pick it out. They go on to talk about how the AVP's contrast and color uniformity are also slightly lower than the Meta Quest 3 on anything but a nearly black image, citing that this is because the issues with AVP's pancake optics dominate over AVP's OLED microdisplay, and this accounts for the glow that people are seeing in the Apple Vision Pro, which is actually unwanted reflections in the pancake optics. There's tons of images in the article that you can actually click on, see them in their full resolution to really get a comparison yourself, so I'll leave a link to that. It is interesting. I still haven't gotten my eyes in Apple Vision Pro to tell you what I'm seeing in the difference, but it does sound like they made the Apple Vision Pro look really good, albeit it still suffers from some of the same problems every headset manufacturer has to decide on, whether they choose to go with something like LCD that can be faster and more responsive, or something like OLED, which gives you those true dark blacks, but then suffers with smear and things like that. And Apple unfortunately hasn't solved all the problems that every other VR manufacturer has been dealing with for years. One of the top uses for VR outside of gaming is actually fitness, and it's a rapidly growing industry. So rapidly growing, it's even going interstellar now. The Vive Focus 3 that is now on the International Space Station is also being used for exercise, where it was previously sent up and used potentially for mental health. Originally, part one of the experiment was to test how it can help astronauts with their mental health using 360-degree videos of scenes on Earth like sunsets, swimming with dolphins, and other scenic views. Now, part two of the experiment is using VR for physical fitness in space. And I just gotta say, that sentence right there, that is some next level, amazing futuristic stuff to me. We have an experiment using virtual reality for fitness in outer space. Amazing. We live in the future. Already, astronauts have to put in a lot of exercise because they have to keep their fitness levels up in space. They're not fighting with gravity. Their body isn't dealing with the strength of that all the time. And if they come back to Earth, their muscles could atrophy a lot. But exercising inside of a boring spaceship can be sterile and cold. And this is where VR is coming into play in this. They're syncing up to a smart exercise bike, and they're basically riding through Denmark due to VR. And this adjusts based on the speed that they are cycling, so it feels like you're really there. One of the people who's actually using VR on the space station said, I have to be honest, I didn't actually expect it would make much of a difference, but I found that I love wearing this headset. It takes me into nature. It makes me feel like I'm out in nature, that I'm outside of the space station, away from this artificial environment, and it really de-stresses me. It makes me relax, takes away a lot of the daily stress, and just allows me to re-energize. To catch my breath, to feel like I'm back on the Earth, it's a really great way to get away from this artificial environment. Unfortunately, of course, these headsets are made to be used on Earth, so they actually had to change some of the internals inside of it so that it would work in a zero gravity environment. It's really cool to see this kind of a use for it, something I hadn't really thought about outside. Obviously VR is great for escapism and being in a different environment here, but when you're stuck in space, it's great for that too now. It seems like less and less as VR is going on, we're seeing less of those articles that say VR's dead, VR's over, VR was a fad. And now it's getting really recognized by a lot of big industries, not just space, but if you're looking for a job right now in the XR field, the CIA is actually hiring. They're looking to hire an extended reality specialist with a salary of between about $62,000 and $164,000 $64,000, which is quite a range in the salary. They say basically in this role, you will use your expertise to interact with agency officers, researchers, and developers to create methods to extend and immerse individuals in their environments. And the job listing goes on with a bunch more jargon. It's kind of a weird little tidbit and news article I thought would just be fun to include there, but it's interesting to see that there. If one of you apply and get hired, let me know in the comments down below. For all of our PCVR crew out there, we've been talking more and more about seeing what headsets are being used the most to play PCVR, and we see the Quest 2 still at the top. The Quest 3's been climbing, it's almost caught up with the Valve Index. Now we're finally seeing the Big Screen Beyond and the Vario Aero actually showing up on the Steam hardware survey. Sadly, just as the Vario Aero got discontinued, but the Big Screen Beyond still becoming one of the most prominent recommended headsets for people interested in PCVR right now. It is still a very small percentage for either one, with 0.15% for the Big Screen Beyond and 0.14% for the Vario Aero, but it really just keeps begging the question, is Valve going to bring us another PCVR headset? Where's the Deckard? We all want to know. A lot of news this week in the VR space. How are you feeling out there? Quest 2, Quest 3, one of the many PCVR? Are you on the PSVR? What are you playing the most? I'd love to hear in the comments down below and chat with you about it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me day after day. I really appreciate all of you out there. We just hit 72,000 subscribers this week, so thank you once again, and I'll see you in another reality.